The Soul series are known for their bosses, specifically for their hard bosses, but I think there are a lot of bosses that are easier than people say, and there are a lot of bosses that are harder than people say. And in today's video, I'll be naming my top 10 bosses that I think are easier than everybody says they are. And just because I think a boss is easier than the people say it is, doesn't mean it's going to be an easy boss. A lot of these bosses are still hard bosses. I just don't think they're as hard as people hype it up to be. And before we get into the top 10, I have to name one honorable mention, and my honorable mention is going to be the Nameless King. And I still do think Nameless King is a great fight. He's a pretty hard fight, but the main hard part for me was how unforgiving this boss was in terms of damage. Like, the amount of damage he did was kind of crazy, but his moveset was pretty easy to learn. It wasn't that complex. He didn't have that many different moves. He did kind of hold a bit like Morgoth did, but like once you learn that, it was pretty easy. His first phase was super easy too, and I feel like he became a lot easier after Elden Ring, because like all his unique and hard parts that were different from the DS3 bosses, like the lightning coming out of the air, that's the average attack you'd see from the Draconic Tree Sentinel. So yeah, I don't think he's super overrated in terms of difficulty, but I think he is a little bit easier than people say. Now to the top 10, and keep in mind, the 10th spot is not as overglazed, and the number 1 spot is a lot easier than I think people say it is. And coming to the 10th spot is Midra, the Lord of Frenzied Flame, and I think he's probably one of the easiest bosses in the DLC, and that's just because all the bosses in the DLC do so much more damage, have so much more defense, and have so much longer and more complicated attacks. And Midra, he's very lenient. Like, his attack combos are super easy to learn, they're super easy to see, and they're just not that long, and he gives you lots of recovery time to just pound him while he just, starts up his next combo. And although he does have the most health, he just doesn't really have any defenses, so that kind of gets rid of that whole aspect. And yeah, his attacks aren't really hard. I played this guy on like 3 different accounts, and I first tried him every time, which is the only Elden Ring DLC boss I've been able to do that to. And that's about all I have to say for Midra, so on to the 9th spot, which is going to be the Smelter Demon from DS2. You can either talk about the blue one or the regular one. They're both pretty similar. I'm just pretty sure the blue one has a little bit more delay in his attacks, but once you realize that, it's basically the same fight. Now, firstly, these guys have very little range in their movesets. They have that swipe from side to side, the jump into the ground attack, and like the explosion, and I'm pretty sure that's all they have. And I've always seen people struggling on this boss, especially on their first playthroughs, and I really don't think he's hard at all. Like, his attacks are always the same. The only hard part is that it kind of takes away your health while you're in front of him, but as long as the fight doesn't take more than 10 minutes, that should not kill you. And I do admit, he's a very intimidating boss. Like, his sounds are scary, he looks scary, and the arena is very tight and compact, so you have to be right next to him the whole time. Besides that intimidation factor, he's a super easy boss in my opinion. And as far as health and damage go, they're probably a little bit above average, but like, you really shouldn't be getting hit by this guy. So on to the next. And before we get to the next, I would just like to advertise the possibility of you guys liking and perhaps even subscribing. And let me know in the comments your hot takes, because I look you want to do a video of like rating your guys' hot takes or commenting on it. So yeah, just let me know your hot takes in the comments below. And next up is going to be the second and last boss of DS2 on this list, and that is going to be the Ivory King. Now, the run back could be kind of annoying, but as long as you got the knights, which obviously this fight's going to be almost impossible without the knights, so I'm just going to kind of assume that everyone has at least 3 of the knights. That way you can at least fight that guy one-on-one. And the Ivory King only has 2 attacks. I'm pretty sure he has like that 1 dash attack and 1 other attack that I can't think of, but I fought this guy like a solid 3 or 4 times, and although he does do pretty decent damage and he does have quite a bit of health, he literally has 2 attacks that are super dodgeable and gives you a shit ton of time, like just a shit ton of time to pound him. And for this guy's defense, you are probably going to have a lot of your health depleted because you would have been fighting a lot of enemies before this, so that would make the fight a little bit more tense and a little bit less forgiving, but you could also just explore the game more and get a shit ton of knights. That way at the end you have a knight helping you too. And next up on this list, which might seem a little bit crazy, but if you've ever seen any of my ranking dragons or hot take videos, I'm going to have to put Midir. I would like to start off by saying Midir is a good fight, and he definitely is pretty hard. I did struggle a little bit with him, but the amount of glaze this guy gets for being one of the hardest bosses in the Soul series is absolutely crazy. And this is one of the bosses that are still very hard, just not as hard as I think people say they are. Firstly, this guy has an absolute shit ton of health, probably the most health in the game, and the amount of damage this guy does is absolutely crazy. He is super unforgiving because you will absolutely run out of heals before you are able to kill this guy. But I feel like his attacks are not as hard as they're hyped up to be. Like the laser, that dark affinity, they're all just super easy to dodge, and half the time you don't really have to dodge them with good positioning. Now, getting up close and personal to him Could be a little bit tricky with his like slams, claws, and boosts and stuff like that, but with some good positioning, patience, and with the camera being on your side, this boss isn't that hard. And coming up next is Quelaag from Dark Souls Remastered. I think this might be the first Dark Souls Remastered boss on this list. And also, I'm not sure if there's any Demon Souls bosses, because I think everyone knows that Demon Souls bosses aren't that hard, so I feel like they're all ranked pretty fair in my opinion. And back to Quelaag, I mean, I think she's a super intimidating boss like Smelter Demon, but she's just super easy. I recently did a shield-only playthrough where I was super underleveled, did around 10 damage a hit, and I first tried this bitch with a 17-minute fight. And I'm saying this to flex and plug my shield-only video, but to also show you her attacks are super easy. If I was able to last 17 minutes underleveled, her attacks can't be that hard, because she has very few attacks. She has that lava spewing attack, which obviously is super easy to dodge and gives you a lot of time to hit her. It can make the arena kind of annoying if she does them back to back, because you'll kind of be walking into lava. She has that attack where she pulls out her sword and starts slashing, but you can just run to her side and avoid that whole thing. And then she has the AoE, which is probably the trickiest part in my opinion, only because you can kind of get stuck under her legs because she's kind of a clunky boss. But besides that, it gives you a lot of warning and you can run away. Now, she does have a lot of health, especially for early game, but her damage isn't that crazy, so I don't think she's that hard of a boss. And coming up next, and I'm pretty sure our 5th spot, is going to be Champion Gunder from Dark Souls 3. And I do enjoy this boss. I fought him for the first time in a while on my DS3 Mimics loot only run, and I did first try this guy, which honestly surprised me because of how hard everyone was saying he was, and because I died so many times to every other boss in that run. And that's just because he is an average boss in my eyes. Obviously, he is a lot more aggressive, does a lot more damage, and has more health than the regular Gundyr. But for an endgame boss, his health is pretty damn low, his damage is pretty average, and his attacks are like, as long as you get used to his playstyle and realize you gotta play more offensive and not just try to spam heal, he is pretty easy, because his attacks are pretty well telegraphed. You're gonna have to get hit by them once or twice to know like what the lineup's gonna look like, but his attacks give quite a bit of leeway, and you'll have a lot of time to hit him after while he's recovering. And coming up next is Osiros. Now, I don't think a lot of people think he's a hard boss. I think it's very split. Like 80% of people think he's a pretty average, middle of the pack boss, but I feel like 20 to 10% think this guy's the hardest guy ever. And I just really think this is one of the easiest bosses in Dark Souls 3. He kind of just ran into the corner. I fought him like a total of 3 or 4 different times, and he was one of the most memorable bosses to me when I was younger, because I used to watch my dad play, and he's like the only boss that would talk, so I kind of remember this guy, and he kind of scared me my first time fighting him. And that's just because he's very erratic, and once you get caught in that, he could kind of mess you up. But it's super easy to tell when he does that, and besides that, he has like one tail swing attack and like this frostbite attack or something like that. But like, he rarely attacks. He's super duper passive, and you can kind of just avoid all that by strafing this guy. And I am pretty sure he has 2 phases, like not 2 separate health bars, but a transitional phase to where he gets more aggressive. And the first phase is absolutely free. I think he did like a total of 5 attacks and just let me hit him. The second phase got a little bit more crazy, but you can just strafe and have good positioning, and it is super easy. And coming up next in the 3rd spot is going to be the Bell-Bearing Hunter from Night Rain and just the regular game, because I'm pretty sure they're the same. And this guy is definitely getting overglazed. I'm seeing on TikTok everywhere how this guy's on demon time. He's just absolutely shitting on everyone under the castle, and I can understand that because he does have a lot of health and he's going to do a lot of damage, and you're probably going to run into him at an early level. The only hard part about this guy is getting greedy. Once you realize his attacks, and I'm assuming everyone here has fought him once or twice, and that's all you need to know his attacks. He has very little attacks. He has that shield slam. He has that thing where his sword flies around to get people to come closer to him. But once you realize that, the only hard part is not getting greedy, because you're going to dodge all his attacks and start spamming, and soon enough you're going to run out of stamina, and then he's going to punish you. And as long as you just keep an eye on your stamina and just realize every now and then I just won't hit, I'll gain my stamina, you should be first trying this guy. And that's about all I have to say for this guy, so on to the next, our 2nd spot, and I'm pretty sure that's going, I know that's going to be my boy Artorias from Dark Souls Remastered DLC. And I'm always seeing this guy be put in the top 3. It's always Artorias, Ornstein Smo, and Manus. And I don't even think Artorias reaches the top 5. He might reach the top 5, but he's a lot easier than people say he is, because there's so many different ways about going around this fight. Obviously, you could just get Dark Bead and full Havel armor and beat every single boss in this game. But like, even if you were to just put on some heavier armor and a decent weapon, like a regular weapon at that, you could probably shit on this guy, because he's not gonna damage you. You're gonna out poison, and you can also out heal him, because he doesn't do a lot of damage and he doesn't have that much health. The main tricky part about this fight is his power up, where he'll go to the back of the arena and start powering up, and once that happens, he's gonna take less damage and do more damage, which is definitely gonna make the fight a lot harder. but it is super easy to knock him out of that animation. You just gotta realize, like, at around 60% and 30% of his HP, he's gonna start to do that attack. So you just kind of got to be careful, make sure your stamina's at full, and once he starts doing that power up, just hit him out of it. And it's free damage, and he doesn't power up. And as far as his attacks go, some of them can be a little tricky, but it's like most tricky attacks do very little damage, so it's super forgiving. He also gives a lot of time and leeway for you to hit him in between his attacks. I can't say the dodging is a little strict between some of his, like, the upward swipes and stuff like that, but he's a very forgiving fight, so that's why he's in the number 2nd spot. And before we get to the 1st spot, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as I've said before. And if you guys like these type of videos, please make sure to check out my channel and check more of them. And now to the number 1 spot, and that would be the Dragon Slayer armor. And I would like to prefix this by saying he's not as overglazed as I originally thought, but after I've done all the rankings and I made this whole list, I'm just going to leave him here anyway, because I still do think he is overglazed in some ways. I would like to say the one hard part about this boss fight is the damage. He does do a lot of damage, but as you'll see with my other points, that is completely negated by all the other easy parts about this boss fight. Also, he's never considered one of the hardest bosses. He's always either in the midline, like the mid-pack, like the 13th place, or a little bit higher on the list. And I just think he is super duper easy, so that's why he's in the number 1 spot. And yeah, for the easy parts, his health is pretty average. He has a little bit lower than I thought it would be for how, like, slow this guy is and how big he is, and he does not have a lot of variety in his attacks. He does have a couple attacks where you're gonna have to probably learn it a little bit, but they're just super easy to dodge. Even on my first try, like my first attempt ever fighting this guy, I was able to kill him without even getting hit once, because his attacks are just super easy to know. Like, it's just common sense on how to dodge them. And half the time, you don't even really have to dodge them with positioning. Half the time, he'll just miss you if you're just backpedaling. And those entities in the sky that shoot fireballs, wherever it is, they only did it for me like one time out of all my playthroughs. Like they do it one time per boss fight, and half the time I don't even think I've ever gotten hit by them, actually. And that is about all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you guys liked it, I already said it, actually. So yeah, see you in the next one.